I was loading my last box into a borrowed car when my phone lit up with a photo that made my hands freeze midair. My brother Dylan standing beside a brand new sedan, keys dangling from his fingers, my parents grinning on either side of him like he'd just cured a disease. The caption read, "So proud of our graduate." I graduated 3 weeks earlier. What I got was an invoice for 18 months of back rent, itemized down to the toilet paper. That morning, I didn't cry. I didn't argue. I just left a single piece of paper on the kitchen counter and drove away from the only home I'd ever known. What they found when they finally read it changed everything they thought they knew about family. Growing up, I learned early that love in our house came with a scorecard. Dylan was born first, louder, bolder, the kind of kid who demanded attention and received it like oxygen. I came 2 years later, quieter, easier, the child who learned to survive by taking up less space. Our childhood home in Minnesota smelled like my mother's lavender candles and my father's weekend pancakes, warmth layered over something I couldn't name yet. Rules that only applied to one of us. When Dylan turned 16 and crashed his first car into a mailbox, Dad laughed it off as a rite of passage. When I asked to borrow the family sedan at 17 for a college campus tour, Mom said I wasn't responsible enough yet. Dylan's bedroom stayed untouched through 4 years of college, a shrine to his high school trophies and unfinished projects. My room was converted into a home gym the week I moved into my dorm. No one asked if I was coming back for summer. They assumed I'd figure it out. College became my escape, a place where effort translated directly into results without someone rewriting the narrative. I worked 2 part-time jobs, tutored underclassmen, kept my scholarship intact through sheer stubbornness. Meanwhile, Dylan bounced between majors like he was shopping for personalities. Business, communications, sports management, each one funded without question. When he finally graduated a year late, it was treated like a miracle. When I graduated summa cum laude on time, I got a text that said, "Congrats, we'll celebrate soon." Soon never came. What came instead was the letter. It arrived on a Tuesday morning, 3 weeks after my graduation. I was in my childhood bedroom, the one that no longer felt like mine, when Mom slid the envelope under the door. Official letterhead, my name typed in cold black ink. I opened it standing by the window, sunlight pouring across words that didn't make sense at first. Statement of account. Accumulated charges. Monthly breakdown. 18 months of rent calculated at $800 per month, plus utilities, plus a share of groceries I apparently owed retroactively. My throat tightened as I scanned the list. They'd charged me for every month I'd come home during college breaks. Winter holidays, spring visits, summer storage of my remaining belongings. $14,400. My hands shook holding the paper, not from anger yet, just disbelief. I walked downstairs where Mom was rinsing dishes, her back to me, movements calm and practiced. "This invoice," I said quietly. She didn't turn around. "Your father and I discussed it. You're an adult now, Julia. Adults contribute. Dylan doesn't pay rent. Dylan just graduated. He's transitioning." The word hung between us like spoiled fruit. Transitioning. As if his 23 years of being funded, supported, celebrated, and excused were just a phase, while my independence was a bill due on arrival. I looked at the paper again, at the itemized charges that included things I never used, expenses I never agreed to. Where was this invoice when I was working 40 hours a week and taking a full course load? Mom finally turned, her expression soft but immovable. "We supported you through school. This is just balancing things out." Balancing. The word tasted bitter. Nothing about this family had ever been balanced. I folded the invoice and walked back upstairs, my pulse a steady drumbeat against my ribs. That night, while my parents watched television downstairs and Dylan gamed in his untouched shrine of a bedroom, I sat on the floor of the room that used to be mine and made a decision. I wasn't going to argue. I wasn't going to beg them to see the inequity they'd spent years perfecting. I was going to leave. But not silently. Not without the truth. I spent the next 2 days gathering everything quietly. My notebooks, my books, my few pieces of furniture they hadn't repurposed. I borrowed a car from my friend Iris, who asked only one question. You okay? Not yet, I said. But I will be. I packed in the early mornings while everyone slept, loading boxes with the care of someone dismantling a past they'd never fully owned. I didn't cry. Tears felt like giving them something they hadn't earned. On the third morning, I woke before sunrise and made one final trip through the house. I passed Dylan's door, cracked open to reveal the blue glow of his monitor. I passed the living room where my graduation photo sat, smaller than his, pushed toward the back of the shelf. I passed the kitchen table where I'd eaten 1,000 meals while learning to make myself invisible. Then I stopped at the counter. I pulled out the note I'd written the night before, smoothed the edges, and placed it beside the coffee maker where I knew they'd find it. The note wasn't long. It didn't need to be. I wrote only what was necessary, what I'd held inside for years. To the family who itemized my existence, I'm not paying $14,000 for the privilege of being tolerated. Dylan got a car. I got an invoice. You taught me what I was worth to you, and I'm choosing to be worth more to myself. I've taken only what's mine. The rest of this house, this family, this imbalance, it's yours to keep. Don't call. Don't text. I'm done auditing my place in your lives. Julia. I placed my key beside the note. No explanation. No return address. Just the clean close of a door I should have shut years ago. By the time they woke up, I was already 2 hours north, the Minnesota skyline shrinking behind me, my phone turned off and tucked into the glove compartment. Iris drove while I sat in the passenger seat, watching farmland roll past in soft green waves, feeling lighter than I had in years. You think they'll actually read it? She asked. I think they'll have to, I said. That's enough. Subscribe before the next twist catches you off guard. The first week away felt like living inside a held breath. I stayed with Iris in her cramped studio apartment in Duluth, sleeping on a futon that smelled faintly of lavender detergent and old books. Every night I expected my phone to explode with messages. Apologies, accusations, something. But the silence stretched on, vast and telling. On day 4, a single text appeared from Mom. We need to talk about this. I stared at the screen. Need. Not want. Not please. Need. I didn't reply. Day 6, my father called. I let it ring. Day 8, Dylan sent a message that made my stomach twist. Seriously, Julia? You're being dramatic. Just come back and deal with this like an adult. Like an adult. I deleted the message and turned my phone face down. Iris watched me from the kitchen, stirring pasta, her face cautious. You don't owe them anything, she said softly. I know, I said. But knowing and believing are different things. By week 2, I'd found a tiny one-bedroom across town. The landlord, a woman named Petra with kind eyes and silver-streaked hair, didn't ask many questions when I explained I was starting over. Just said, first month is on deposit only. Pay me when you're stable. The apartment smelled like lemon cleaner and possibility. One window overlooked a small park where kids played in the early evenings. I bought a used desk, a lamp, a single chair. I didn't need much. I just needed space that didn't come with a price list attached. The months that followed weren't easy, but they were mine. I found work at a nonprofit coordinating outreach programs. The pay was modest, but it covered rent, groceries, the small careful life I was building one intentional piece at a time. Some nights I sat by the window with tea, watching the streetlights flicker on, thinking about the note I'd left behind, wondering if they'd ever really understood it. Then, for months after I left, my phone rang from a number I didn't recognize. I almost let it go to voicemail. Instead, I answered. Julia? The voice was unfamiliar, older, cautious. This is your Aunt Becca. We haven't spoken in years. My chest tightened. Becca was my mother's younger sister, someone I'd only met a handful of times at family events where she always seemed to hover at the edges, observing more than participating. I know, she continued. And I'm sorry for that. But I need to tell you something about your parents. Something you deserve to know. She paused, and I heard her exhale slowly. I was at their house last week. I saw the note you left. Your mother tried to hide it, but I'd already read it. Julia, they never told you the truth about that rent invoice. My pulse quickened. What truth? Your grandparents, my parents, they left you money. A trust fund. $50,000 specifically for you when you graduated college. Your parents were supposed to give it to you. Instead, they used it. The room around me seemed to tilt. Used it for what? Dylan's expenses. His extra year of school, his apartment, his car. They drained your entire trust and then billed you for rent to cover the gap they created. I couldn't breathe. The air in my apartment felt too thin, too sharp. Becca kept talking, her voice low and steady. I have the documents. Bank statements, trust paperwork, everything. I made copies before your mother could stop me. I can send them to you if you want proof. But Julia, I need you to know this wasn't about money. This was about control. About keeping you small so Dylan could stay big. My hands were shaking. Why are you telling me this? Because someone should have told you years ago. And because you deserve to decide what to do with the truth. That night I didn't sleep. I sat on the floor of my apartment with my laptop open, reading through the documents Becca emailed. Page after page of transactions, transfers, my name listed beside amounts that should have built my future, but instead subsidized someone else's comfort. The invoice they'd given me wasn't balancing anything. It was covering up theft. Quiet, calculated, family-wrapped theft. Only subscribers get the full story. Don't be left behind. By morning, I'd made my decision. I wasn't going back to that house. I wasn't going to scream or beg for apologies that wouldn't come. But I wasn't staying silent either. I contacted a lawyer named Gregor Hall, someone Becca recommended who specialized in estate and family disputes. He reviewed the documents within 2 days. This is actionable, he said simply. They misappropriated funds held in trust for you. You have every right to pursue restitution. I didn't want revenge. I wanted acknowledgement. I wanted them to admit, just once, that what they did was wrong. But more than that, I wanted my future back. The future my grandparents had tried to give me before my parents decided Dylan deserved it more. We filed a formal claim the following week. Legal, clear, undeniable. The response came faster than I expected. My father called first, his voice tight and unfamiliar. Julia, we need to discuss this privately. There's nothing private about stealing $50,000, I said calmly. He sputtered, tried to reframe it as a misunderstanding, a family matter that didn't need lawyers. But I'd already heard the script. The softening. The justifications. The rewriting of reality into something more comfortable for them. I let him finish, then said, "You taught me to handle things like an adult." This is me doing exactly that. I hung up. 3 days later, my mother sent an email. Long, winding, full of phrases like "we thought we were helping" and "Dylan needed support" and "you've always been so independent." As if independence were a trait I'd chosen rather than a survival skill I'd been forced to develop. I didn't reply. Gregor did. With documentation, a timeline, and a settlement demand. Pay back the $50,000 plus interest or face a formal lawsuit with public records. The silence that followed felt different this time. Heavier. A week passed. Then another. Then, on a cold November afternoon, a cashier's check arrived in the mail. $53,000. No note. No apology. Just payment. Quiet acknowledgement that I'd been right all along. If you're still not subscribing, drop a comment. What's holding you back? I deposited the check the same day. Didn't celebrate. Didn't call anyone. Just watched the numbers appear in my account and felt something unfamiliar settle in my chest. Not victory. Not bitterness. Closure. The kind that doesn't come with reconciliation, but with the simple recognition that I no longer needed their version of love to know my worth. Months later, I used part of that money to go back to school. A graduate program I'd always wanted but thought I couldn't afford. The rest I saved, built a foundation my grandparents had wanted me to have all along. I didn't hear from my parents again. No holiday cards. No calls. Dylan sent one message months later, short and cold. "Hope you're happy now." I didn't respond. Because the truth was I was. Not in the loud, showy way they'd always celebrated success, but in the quiet, steady way that comes from finally choosing yourself. I think about that note sometimes. The one I left on the counter beside my key. How it wasn't anger or revenge, just truth delivered plainly. They taught me what I was worth to them. And I chose to be worth more to myself. That choice, that single decision to stop shrinking, changed everything. Not just my bank account or my living situation. It changed the way I saw family, love, what I was willing to tolerate in the name of keeping peace. Some people think leaving is giving up. But sometimes leaving is the only way to stop losing yourself. If you've ever been made to feel like you owe someone for simply existing, for taking up space, for being less convenient than someone else, you're not alone. You don't owe anyone access to your life at the cost of your dignity. Family isn't just blood. It's respect, reciprocity, the choice to see someone fully instead of selectively. My grandparents saw me. They left me something my parents tried to take. But what they really left me was permission to walk away from people who only valued me when I stayed small. So to anyone listening who's standing at their own crossroads, holding their own invoice for love that should have been free, know this. You deserve more. You deserve a life where your worth isn't calculated, where your presence isn't itemized, where the people who claim to love you actually show up. And if they don't, leave the note. Take your key. Build the life they said you didn't deserve. Because the best response to people who underestimate you is becoming exactly who you were meant to be without them. If this story resonated, share your truth below. Tell me where you're listening from and what you would have done. And subscribe so you don't miss stories where the underestimated finally take back their power. Sometimes justice isn't loud. It's just a girl, a car, and the quiet decision to choose herself. Every single time.